What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Kick-Ass Podcast. I hope everyone is having an awesome week so far. We've almost made it to a big weekend here in the wrestling world. That, of course, being this Saturday's AEW Full Gear pay-per-view, which is on November 13th, 2021. And just saying that date is crazy because we're pretty much almost finished with this year, which is insane to just think about. This year has just flown by. But today's show itself is just going to focus primarily on Dynamite and a prediction show for Full Gear itself. We'll, of course, go over Dynamite first to break that down. And that felt like the go-home show, to be honest with you, even though we still have Rampage coming up here on Friday. But like I said, we'll go over Dynamite and then look over Full Gear just to go in sequential order there. Just makes sense. But again, before we get into the meat and potatoes of everything, I appreciate everyone's support again, and feel free to send feedback as usual on Twitter at ASHMANNS or via email at kickashman@gmail.com. I appreciate all the support and the feedback and the love you guys have given me so far. But I just wanted to get that out of the way and just to, of course, just send that out there again and just thank you guys as usual. But we're going to not really waste much time because we got a lot to kind of go over here just to break down and all that good stuff. But it just makes sense to start with Dynamite. So, again, this week's episode of Dynamite led off with Bryan Danielson, which seems to be the normal as of late, which is brilliant if you're AEW and Tony Khan in particular, because what better way to hook your audience, right, than starting off with a Bryan Danielson match or anything Bryan Danielson related. So it's kind of cool that he's been the opening act as of late, regardless if it's been on Rampage or Dynamite. So I think that's pretty smart there, and it's good layering and a good anchoring for the show. And this week's opponent for Bryan was Rocky Romero, making his AEW Dynamite, at least, in-ring debut. I believe he's shown up, I don't know, it must have been Darker Elevation in the past, but I believe he has been in AEW at least one other time prior, but this was at least his Dynamite debut. And they, not surprisingly, had a awesome match, guys. If you missed it or you haven't seen it yet, make sure of course, I think this whole show, spoiler, you should go back and watch in its entirety, but this match alone, and I think it's just seeing the freedom in this side of Bryan Danielson, the American Dragon, right, coming back, and it's just a reminder of who he was years and years ago, but in advanced, in a more well-rounded, which is insane to even to think, because he's always just had that it factor that they say, right? And it's crazy because, not to get too in-depth here, but just to think of WWE and how hard it was for him to ascend to the top because of his appearance and maybe some things that WWE or whoever there would think he's lacking. But to see how much of a star he is and just how solid he is in the ring, and it just shows that your in-ring skills do mean a lot. Like, a lot of people say being well-rounded on the mic and being a good promo and all that is most important, and that's probably true. And I, of course, I'm not in the business, so who am I to say what is or isn't, but Bryan kind of proves that if you have it in the ring, that should be the main thing as well, and that shouldn't be overlooked or undervalued. So he, of course, just killed it. They had an awesome back and forth match. The end sequence was where Romero started to hit the sliced bread, and Bryan blocked it and then started hitting those kicks. And those kicks just stick out amongst other things, but for whatever reason, when he starts those, it just shows just like an anger and just a fury in him. And it just kind of, I think that, in my opinion, that's when it kind of takes it to the next level, right? And it just shows that dragon spirit come out of him. So, and that's when you know, like, oh shit, like things are about to get real. So, of course, that it ended up leading towards the end of the match. Danielson ended up locking in the Tequila Sunrise and forced Romero to tap out, which I don't know if I was a little surprised. I mean, of course, I would have saw Bryan winning here, but I don't know if I would have expected a pinfall victory just with Rocky Romero being who he is. But when you look back on Bryan's victories the past few weeks, he has been winning the majority of them by submission. So and of course various holds too, which is it just shows how much of a master he is. And when you think about who he was trained by, being Shawn Michaels, it's I guess it shouldn't be surprising, but man, it's just we're so lucky to have him back, guys. It's just I just one it's one of those things that you just sit back and think a few years ago, what 3 or 4 years ago, we may not even thought this was possible. So it's so cool to see. But Brian, of course, got the victory here. And it makes you even more excited for what is going to come on Saturday. Him and Miro, it's, oh my gosh. But that's a whole nother story, and we'll get into that for the prediction side. But after that led us into the Minute of the Year in the American Top Team segment. Inner Circle was making their entrance here, of course, with Judas leading them out. And surprisingly, they got sabotaged. They got hit from behind by American Top Team with Dan Lambert and his crew. Ethan Page, Scorpio Sky, and all the other guys there in tow. But I was actually kind of surprised by this, and what better way to generate crowd heat automatically than by taking the joy of singing Judas away from them, right? And it's such a tease. Like, it's so perfect for a Dan Lambert character and what he's been doing. Just to take any type of enjoyment away from the fans is what you can just tell by looking at him and things that he said he thrives off of. So that was a nice little input and nice little touch there, I think. But man, that beatdown, I didn't expect it to go on as long as it did, but it kind of makes sense leading into the pay-per-view itself because of what I predict the outcome may end up being, which I'll save for later. But it was a nice segment here, and it did what it needed to do. It put heat on American Top Team and Scorpio Sky and All Ego Ethan Page. But the table spot, guys, I'm curious to hear what you guys think about it. It definitely, some people compared it to like a Snoop Dogg level celebrity-ish interaction, but hey, it makes you that much more intrigued for the actual match itself since Lambert is going to be involved. But it wasn't the worst, it wasn't the best, but it was what it was, and I don't think I probably would have expected much more. So I mean, hey, kudos to them for even doing it, and again, more kudos and shout-outs to Jericho, because he didn't have to be the one taking the table spot. They didn't even have to do it to begin with. So whether you look at it as, oh, well, of course, if this is going to make headlines in, like, Sports Illustrated and stuff like that, then Jericho wants to be involved, maybe, but I don't know. His name would get dropped in the article regardless, right? So I think it's just cool what Jericho's doing, but we'll get into that and more in depth later on too. But after that segment ended up wrapping up, that led us to the moment of the night, or I'm not gonna say the moment of the night, but the match of the night, which I was kind of surprised by, which was the Dr. Britt Baker, Jamie Hayter, and Rebel versus Thunder Rosa, Tay Conti, and Anna Jay match. Mainly because they did get a decent amount of time here, and I was talking with DJ Kuzmo on Twitter. Shout out DJ Kuzmo. Just for the simple fact that I was happy that they got time on the show, but especially Thunder Rosa. She's been kind of, I don't want to say overlooked because that's not the case, but she's, I think, deliberately been left off of Dynamite and not really, I mean, she's had her matches, and my point is, of course, she's been on Dark and Elevation and things like that, but I think what they've been doing is kind of holding her to the side and just maybe keeping her on like a side warmer. Because, and not to get too far ahead, but I think she's going to end up facing I'm just to hold my prediction here, but she's going to end up facing the winner of the AEW women's title match at Full Gear. But I was just surprised that they first got as much time as they did, which I think is well overdue. But just the solidity of the match, I'll say, for everyone involved, all 6 competitors, because it could have gone way worse, of course, and a lot of people have criticized, I think is the right way to put it, AEW's women division in the past, and of course, yeah, it's nowhere near maybe other divisions, but you gotta think of the progression, right, and the level in time in the industry that a lot of the competitors in the women's division have had. So a lot of them are still learning and growing too, and I think that sometimes gets forgotten. Like, for instance, like Anna Jay, like, she's still learning. She's very, very new into the business. I think she maybe has a handful of matches. I don't know her exact record here right now, but if you just look at someone like Anna Jay and where she started and where she's progressed just in this short amount of time. So I think in her, and of course Tay Conti, I think I'm a big fan of Tay Conti as well, but just the progression itself, and I think of course Thunder Rosa here, in my opinion, was like the glue that held everything together in this match. But it was solid, and I think it went really well. And I don't think I saw some people kind of giving it crap on Twitter or whatever, which I don't think this match deserved it. I think, and of course that crossbody by Thunder Rosa there towards the end, it's just amazing what she can do. She just makes everything look easy, but gonna get into her a little bit on later as well. But this was a solid match, and I wasn't really surprised here with the victors there. But of course, being Thunder Rosa, Tay Conti, and Anna Jay, because you want to build some momentum, right? That all empowering momentum going into the Full Gear pay-per-view for Tay Conti. But I don't know. It was an interesting ending with Britt not getting involved. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that, because you want to think that, especially in AEW, that wins and losses matter. And of course, it obviously wasn't a singles match, and it was just a tag team match. But I don't know. I kind of wish that it maybe would have ended a little bit differently, but I get the mindset behind it, and the idea was to put the shine on Tay Conti, which is smart, obviously, going, like I said, into this weekend. And especially, too, with the majority of everyone thinking that, of course, Dr. Britt Baker is going to retain and be the victorious one in their bout. But, it's kind of cool to see Tay Conti get her moment here. And like I said, we'll get into that a little bit later. But I think all in all, it was well laid out, and it served its purpose here. But that, again, led us to what I think, putting everything to the side, right, that's happened behind, I don't want to say behind the scenes, but in real life. But just looking at the characters and the act themselves, I'm a huge fan of the Acclaim, man. Matt Caster is just, he has something there, and he's another one where a lot of people say that he needs to get better, well-rounded in the ring and just get more reps in and stuff like that, which I think that can, of course, be developed and fine-tuned over time, but just seeing how comfortable he is on the mic, I think that's a big thing, too. Like I said earlier, a lot of people, put what's more important, either being better on the mic or in the ring, and of course, it should be a balance between the two, obviously, but Max just has something about him, man. Like, he's just, people, of course, compare him to, like, the early John Cena version, too, right? The rapper and everything, but I don't know, there's just something about him, and Anthony Bowens is just the perfect tag team partner for him, the perfect, I don't want to say sidekick, but just the perfect partner. And it's cool to see Anthony getting his shine too here, since he had been out for a while. And I think him versus Jungle Boy was the perfect match for the both of them, especially for Jungle Boy with his match going into the pay-per-view this weekend as well. But this match itself, and before I even get into it, take time out of your day, if you haven't seen Dynamite, to check out Max's rap. It's like, maybe a minute long. It's not going to take much time at all, a minute and a half. But it's just always a highlight to hear what shit he's going to say, because it's just always, he shit talks to the fans, and he says something personal about his opponent or Anthony's opponent, and then it's done. It's great. But again, like, I wish he would kind of get maybe more time, but at the end of the day, I'm just happy that both of them are on Dynamite more, and it seems that they may be getting more TV time and not just like Dark and Elevation time as well. So that's cool, and it'll be fun to see how they progress too, because they're a new tag team as well. Tony Khan has said that they were actually a pet project of his, and he actually teamed them up and kind of just, I don't want to say gave them their character, but gave them their direction and the idea. So that it's just fun to think about that too, and to see how much they've come so far in the past 2 years as well. So, but again, this match itself was really good. And first of all, Jungle Boy has facial hair. It's growing in, and I'm here for it. He's becoming a jungle man, so I read on Twitter, which is cool. But it kind of makes sense too, right? Like, if he's in the jungles, like, he wouldn't be shaving and shit. So I'm digging the beard coming in. But yeah, he's just, looking at him too, he's just another one that, like MJF said, one of the pillars. And I love that. And since we've been harping on promos here, which I don't really know why, it wasn't the idea, but the fact that he isn't really that strong on the mic yet I love it. And I think it's perfect for him and for his character. But the match itself, it was snug, and like I said, it was surprisingly very good. Like, it was one of those matches where you wouldn't really think of you wanted to see a match with these two guys against each other, just because you maybe wouldn't have thought about it. But once you see it, it's like, wow, like, this was actually really good, and I'd totally be down to see a rematch. You know, especially with the way it ended with Bowens tapping out to the snare trap by Jungle Boy, which Anthony almost made it to the bottom rope, and I kind of bought in, maybe thinking that they were going to let them go maybe a few more minutes, but he ended up, like I said, tapping out, which of course makes sense. Jungle Boy needed the victory. Well, I'm not going to say needed the victory here, but it just makes sense, right? Like, you don't, with going into this weekend and everything that Jungle Boy has going on right now and the momentum that he has, or that he's trying to build, Anthony Bowens can take the loss here, especially being in a tag team. But again, it just showed you, man, like, one day, if they end up breaking up or just doing their own thing, Anthony could be a breakout guy too. So I think he's definitely one to kind of keep an eye on. But the interesting part after this match itself properly ended was Bobby Fish making his way to the ring, ran down right after Jungle Boy had finished up the match and was celebrating and all that good stuff, which, by the way, it was kind of interesting that Luchasaurus didn't accompany Jungle Boy to the ring, especially with Max being ringside with Anthony. It's not like, you know, your tag partners were banned from ringside or anything like that. I don't really know. It was just kind of odd to me. That was one of the things that stood out. Yeah, I'm digging seeing Jungle Boy kind of do his own singles thing, but just to at least accompany him to the ring, and even if you kind of want to get away from maybe having Jungle Boy on Luchasaurus's shoulders coming out, like if you're trying to establish him as maybe more of his, like, an individual act, maybe do, you know, change that part up, but I don't know, it was just kind of weird. But like I said, Bobby Fish was making his way down to the ring and attacked him from behind, all that good stuff, and then that actually ended up to Christian Cage and Luchasaurus making their way out, which, to be honest with you, I don't even know why. For a split second there, I completely forgot about Christian Cage being involved. Again, no idea why, but just like a complete overlook on my side for whatever reason. But they made their way down to save good old Jungle Boy and ended up chasing Bobby Fish away. But that led into the most interesting part of this whole segment to me, and I think it's a fun little seed being planted, because after that we saw Fish and Adam Cole, well, of course, along with the Young Bucks as well. But first of all, just to see Adam Cole and Bobby Fish in AEW, and to think where they were just a few months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, it's just kind of surreal to think about, and to think of the possibility coming up. And I read somewhere that Kyle O'Reilly's contract could be up sometime in December, so maybe a few weeks away, not far at all. Man, guys, to think that the three of them alone could be in AEW is just kind of like a mindfuck in itself, because they were the heart and soul of NXT, right? Like, Undisputed Era, of course, you know, not to leave out Roddy, but they were it for the longest time, and to think that the three of them could possibly be in AEW together, that there's just so many things that could lead and just spawn off of that. So that's a whole other topic for a different day. But it was just cool to see them, first of all four interact, and to see Bobby Fish backstage with the Young Bucks as well, and how he kind of walked up on their conversation, and Adam Cole was about to introduce him, and the Young Bucks were like, oh no, we know Bobby Fish, that type of thing. And just the little pretty obvious if you know anything about wrestling, or NXT for that matter, the little what did they say? It was like an undisputed era, or the era is the lead, and just like this is undisputed, and just like little things like that they just dropped into their promo, I guess you would call it. It's just fun, right? Some people don't like it because they think, you know, just it's maybe beneath them, or in my opinion, like, no, like, they're not even taking shots, guys. So I again saw it, and a lot of times that's why I just don't even look at Twitter sometimes, unless I'm like engaging with some folks. But it's like, people just want to bitch just to bitch about some stuff, and I think what the Young Bucks did there was perfect, and it's obvious, like, that's what they're playing off of. So I loved that, and I can't wait to see what it means going forward. And I love that it led into the match with Bobby Fish is going to have against Jungle Boy on Rampage this Friday. And again, like, I don't know how, Jungle Boy having 2 matches back to back, like, that's interesting, and it's obvious that he and Adam Cole are the focal point in this whole storyline in and of itself when you compare both teams, but I don't know, having Jungle Boy in another match, that's an interesting way to take it. But regardless, of course, we all know it's going to be a good match, and I can't wait to see the dynamic there. Bobby Fish's style kind of clashing there. Well, not clashing, but just meshing, I guess, or lack thereof, with Jungle Boy to see how they kind of play off of each other. So it'll be cool to see it in a nice match. I'd probably go maybe, 10, 12, 13 minutes on Rampage. So that may even end up being the opening match, because I'm not sure what else they have announced for Rampage, or that they may have already, I think they actually taped it last night, now that I think about it, but I'm not sure of the Rampage card itself proper, but regardless, guys, that I can't wait to see that match and to see, like I said, how they kind of play off of each other. But that led into the next, I think, if you're going to have a squash match, this is the definition, right, or pretty close to it. Poor Wheeler Yuta versus Wardlow. First off, super happy to see Wardlow get some shine here and get some attention outside of MJF, and I liked that it was kind of completely separate from anything MJF related. It was just Wardlow coming out there by himself doing his own thing and dominated the match, as he should. Wardlow is just a star, and to see the reaction that he was getting from the crowd already was just totally cool to see. But poor Yuta, man, like, he just took a brutal beating, but it was a nice start for Wardlow, and I think MJF shortly after the match went on to say that he heard or saw Wardlow's match and he was proud of him, or something kind of short like that. So again, this I think is another sign too of just more seeds being planted for MJF's possibly next feud, or a feud that may not be too far off, and the breakup finally of Wardlow and MJF. But I'm here for that, just because I think Wardlow could be a big star, and the look, I mean, look at him, he's just insane. So definitely excited to see what he has as a singles act going forward, once we get there, at least, of course, because I'm sure we're probably a few months off from that, but it just another sign that it's coming, guys. And Wardlow, man, like, just the thing, just a solid, for instance, like a him versus Miro, right? Because once he's on his own, like, he's going to be free to have more matches and be featured, hopefully, more prominently on the show, and just obviously have more of a character build at that point. But just to think of all the possibilities he has, it's fun to think about. But after the match, as Cassidy and Chuck Taylor were checking on their fellow friend, the Blade, Isaiah Cassidy, came down and attacked them with Matt Hardy, who had been ringside. I don't know if he was there the entire night up to that point, or if he had just come out prior to. I know he was shown earlier, but I don't know if he actually stayed the entire time. But they came in there and attacked Orange Cassidy and all of them, and they actually did this spot where they put Orange Cassidy's neck in a chair, and Matt hit the Twist of Fate like that, and it ended up just smashing Orange Cassidy's neck, which was pretty brutal. And to be honest with you, I'm just more so shocked that this is still going on and continuing. Like, how long has this been going on now? And I don't know, like, I'm kind of over it. Like, I can appreciate what they're trying to do, but I just feel like we got to move on here. And I don't know if this was a way to write Cassidy off for a while, or what, because he had already had previous injuries that he had been selling. So I don't know, but I'm just kind of ready to move on from that. But after that, they had showed backstage footage of CM Punk and Eddie Kingston just going at each other backstage in the parking lot. Is pretty sure that's where they were. Yeah, parking lot. But again, perfect way to follow from last week. And from there, that just beautiful, I don't even want to call it a promo, because it just felt so real, but their promo segment, for lack of better words, from Rampage last week, it was just so well done, and nothing that they could have, in my opinion, said verbally on the mic this week would have topped last week, right? Like, the direction that they ended up taking this, and at first I was kind of leery with the whole Punk just being pissed off that he was interrupted, because you're in wrestling, dude. Like, everyone gets interrupted, right? Like, so it was just kind of, I don't want to say weak, but like to steal an MJF phrase, a mid starting point. But man, like, and that, like I said then too, like, these guys just can just turn anything into magic, nothing into magic. It just shows how just almost perfect they are on the mic, and just it again shows why we were just like salivating at the thought of these two guys going at each other. And I think that's why we may have wanted more time just to get more out of these guys. But if you think about it, there's only so much that they could have said, and what they said last week and how they followed it up this week with no words, just fist and just not being able to stand the side of each other. That makes logical sense, from CM Punk calling him Eddie Kingston a bum, and after I think it was a few days ago, I don't know the exact date, but Eddie Kingston just recently released an article that he wrote in the Players Tribune, which was just a fascinating read. And it's just, again, like, not to go off on another tangent here, but just the stuff that him and Jon Moxley are showing, and especially Eddie Kingston right now, just with how open verbally he's being, but just like mental health issues and just addiction issues in the past and just things that they're going through, just, it's so relatable, right? And not to say that they're doing it for a character purpose at all, but it just, when you see them on TV, it makes them that much more relatable. So it just kind of just ties all in a kind of beautiful bow if you think about it, and just a well thought out and just real promo and a real segment, which wrestling had been missing for quite some time. So kudos to them. It looked awesome. I love seeing Ruby Soho involved in the breakup, and see guys there too. Side note, people slip up, man. Like, how long have we known Ruby Riott as Ruby Riott? So people still giving JR shit about calling Bryan Danielson Daniel Bryan. Like, get over yourself. Like, you've probably done it and not even noticed it, but the fact that JR is on TV, you hear it. Like, so just stupid shit like that is just, get over yourselves, guys. But anyway, Ruby Soho being involved in the breakups of some of these brawls recently has been kind of cool. Like, I like seeing females involved and shit like that, and just in the nitty gritty. And she just so happens to be in that area, right? So, and she sees shit going down, she wants to help break it up, like she wants to help her friends, and it's just cool, right? And it fits what you would think her character and what she would do in a situation like that, and how she would respond. So it was just, I don't know if anyone else has noticed that, but that's kind of stood out to me the past few weeks here. So I kind of dig that, because I don't think you would necessarily see that in WWE itself, especially with Ruby Riott or Ruby Soho, or wherever she would have been. Obviously Ruby Riott over there. So I love what they're kind of doing with her, even though it may not be anything major or anything that I don't know. It just kind of stood out to me, and I kind of dig that, seeing that, and I hope they kind of continue with that too. Next up, we got what very well could have been match of the night, which is crazy to say when you have a Bryan Danielson match on the card, but it was Dante Martin and Lio Rush versus Lee Moriarty and Matt Sydal. Like, this, like, how? Like, how do they do the things they do? It's just, you watch this match, and it's one of those things where it's like a Lucha Brothers match. Like, how do you take notes? Like, you look down to write a note or to do anything, and you've missed, like, 3 sequences after that. It's just one of those things where you just let it speak for itself. And I don't know how commentators do it, so shout out to them. But it was one of those matches where you love to see, and it had a story too, right? It wasn't just 4 guys thrown together or 2 teams thrown together just to fill time on the TV show. Like, the build up in the story that they've been doing with Lio Rush kind of taking over Dante's leadership roles and things like that. So it was cool. And with the heartfelt, I guess, sentiment behind it, and I don't recall if they mentioned it on air or not, but Lio Rush had recently, his grandmother, I believe it was, had passed away maybe a few days ago, and she had mentioned that she can't wait to see him, debut on TV again, and she was just looking forward to seeing him actually wrestle on broadcast television. And to think that he, just had, that she just barely missed it is must be heartbreaking for him, and just condolences to him and his family. But to see him still go out there and do a kick-ass match, and to do the things he did, and to be level-headed enough to keep focus on the task at hand, it's just amazing to think about because I don't know if I could have done it, to be honest with you. It's just one of those things. So that thinking of what he was dealing with personally and mentally, it's just, and you know, emotionally and all those things, but to still go out there and do what he did is just amazing. And I'm happy that he got the win too, right? Like, not that I mean, I don't want to say not that that should have anything to do with it, but a lot of times you don't see it, right? A lot of times it doesn't matter what's going on in real life, or if it's your birthday, or if you're in your hometown, or something bad has just happened, or anything like that. Like, a lot of times that has nothing to do with it, and it very well may not have here either, but I don't know. Regardless of the exact reasoning, I'm just happy that Leo Rush and Dante Martin got the win here, and I hope that they go forward as a team. Like, they're incredible. So I'm happy to see Dante have some focus too in a direction, and it's cool to see him get some shine on the TV or the television show proper each week, and not just on like a dark or an elevation and stuff like that. Because he's one of those that, yeah, he's still mad young, but one of the ones that you want to see mad young because he's that good, and to see how he progresses, and you want to follow along. So super stoked to see where he ends up in the future too, and he could very well end up being a pillar too, right? Like, I mean, you can't just have four pillars, you know, like you need shit, you know, to hold up a building, right? Like, what are you holding up? So that's a whole other story, but it's just, like I said, it was an awesome match. Definitely, if you have to pick and choose what you watch out of last night's show, make sure that's one of them too. But right after that match, we got another moment in last night's episode, which was just a standout moment, and it was maybe a minute and some change long, not even. Another Miro promo. This guy, I don't know how long it takes him to map out what he's going to say for these promos or his preparation process. Part of me would be fascinated to learn. Part of me wants to have no idea because it may take the allure away from it. But dude, like, he's just amazing. Like, to think that he kind of tells a whole story in a minute each week, or maybe not even a minute sometimes, it's just insane. I'm not even gonna, nothing I say here, I could read it word for word, and it wouldn't come nearly across as it should. So again, definitely check out Miro's promo. But a line that stuck out was, of course, he's talking to his God and still going in that direction. But he had mentioned, is God willing to, in some effect, to trade Miro's, or to sacrifice Miro's neck for Daniel's, or something to that effect. But the way that he plays in real life shit with his promos, but still focuses it on God and his wife and things like that, it's just like a masterclass almost, in like a movie each week. And I love just the visual too. Him just standing in a completely dark room with maybe one light on him, whatever that. It's so well done. And I don't know, you could say a lot of people rather have said a lot of shitty things about AEW's production and stuff like that, but no, not here. This is amazing. Like, and it shows you a lot of times less is more. He doesn't need someone holding a microphone to him to go through an hour of production, doing retakes, and have someone, he just goes out there. And again, like, him and Tony, I'm sure, may collaborate. Again, we don't know the process, and I don't want to know the process, probably. Like I just said, I truly think that I would make it a point to maybe avoid it, especially for like a Miro, because he's captivating. So it plays into everything that is building up to his match at Full Gear with Bryan Danielson. And to think that a week ago, maybe a little over a week ago, he wasn't even in the picture for this, in the tournament, and to see what he's done promo-wise and how they've just made a complete 180 turn storyline and direction-wise. And it makes sense still. Like, it's not like an obvious just shoe-in. And to be honest with you, it's one of the more difficult choices to make for prediction-wise going into the pay-per-view. So I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out and to see what the bigger picture is. And I said on Twitter, I'm scared for God if Miro loses here, because he stresses the fact that he needs this title, and this is his motive, right? And what he needs to succeed and to prove himself and to prove God and everything like that. So it's just probably one of my favorite, and one of the things I look forward to most each week, wrestling wise, is just the Miro promo in and of itself. So check that out too, guys, for sure. But after that, we got Dax Harwood versus Pac. And like I said earlier with Bobby Fish, I think it was Bobby Fish, but this is another match that you didn't really think that you needed to see, or you never thought that you wanted to see, but man, was this a hard-hitting ass match. And it's just, what these guys do is just, and Pac can do is just on another level. And first, one thing that did stick out to me, he attempted to go for the Black Arrow towards the end of the match, and that just proves that he's a babyface. And maybe it should have been obvious, and it kind of in some ways was, but he had made it a point in the past when he was an obvious and true heel to tease the fans with his high-flying moves. Like, he would go to the top and tease that he's going to hit the Black Arrow and then not do it, just so he can piss us off even more. And things like that, which, just another reason why he's so good at either version, really, but he's so good as a heel, too, because he's just that look and just that nasty vibe that he gives off, and just little things like that a lot of people don't do, or maybe still want to do to get that big pop moment, he doesn't do. And I like that he changes up his movesets, but it was cool that he was going to try to hit it, and it just kind of solidifies his match going into this weekend as well, being partnered up with Cody, and they're trying to use Pac to give Cody that rub, maybe not the rub, but babyface wise, the love back, I should say. But we'll get into that. It'll probably be on a separate show in and of itself, but later on here too in the prediction show. But that match, Pac and Dax, was just everything that you probably expected it to be, and it's just snug and hard hitting, and just in looking at Dax too, poor guy had his shoulder taped up and his still had the brace on his knee, and it's just the visual itself, like the dude's just a badass. So shout out to him too for being in obvious pain and to be trucking through some probably nagging injuries and still going out there every week. It's just, it's one of those things that I don't think I could imagine doing and being able to sustain each week without actually doing it, if that makes any sense at all. Because they're just like, they're athletes, and they're just like on a different level, right? The training and everything in the preparation show. So just shout out to them too, but that just really stood out to me, just seeing how bandaged up he was. But that led to, of course, the lead-in for... That's why I said at the start of the show that this kind of felt like the go-home show, because everything was it was pointing to Full Gear and not anything that needed to be maybe like a bow placed on it on Rampage. But that led to Cash Wheeler coming out because Pac wouldn't let go of the hold after the bell, which then led to the lights going out again, which kind of took they were out for a while. At one point I was like, oh, what's going on here? But of course it was Malachi Black and Andrade who were joining them, which it's I don't think we've actually gotten a clear understanding why, or explanation rather, as to why Malachi Black and Andrade are teaming up together, which, I mean, of course, if you know them, you know the real life, which connection between them, of course, Malachi Black being married to Thea, and Thea Trinidad was, of course, Zelina Vega being the manager to Andrade and all that good stuff. So I guess maybe it's just like what is kind of understood as need to be explained type thing, or maybe they're going to touch on it later, or maybe it's not a big deal and they're just friends. Why can't they be friends? But when you just visually, if nothing else, like they're polar opposites, so if nothing else, like you want to, in style-wise and everything like that, like they're just pretty drastic characters when you compare them to each other. So I'm wondering if this is going to be like a long-term thing. We get like a kind of like a foundation explanation, but if not, it's just cool to see them working together and just kind of have the knowledge that you do have of their history together and their connection. But the thing that kind of stood out here to me too, and of course the Lucha Brothers and Cody made their way out to make the save, but Cody, like, he came running through like the top level, like the mid upper level of the audience, or the arena there rather, and in the audience. So it's like, where are you coming from, dude? Like, I know I get, maybe I don't know. I was gonna say maybe I get why you don't want to be running from the back, but that's obviously where we expect you to be. So the first thing that I thought when I saw him coming down, I was like, dude, where were you? Like, is your office like in the lobby area? Were you strolling for merch? Like, you saying hey to the fans? Like, what are you doing out there? And another thing was too, he wasn't in a suit. He was in that black sleeveless hoodie, dark pants, and just not suit Cody. So I don't know if that's a sign or maybe another seed for anything coming up in the future, but just another interesting little tidbit there. But after that segment wrapped up, we finally made it to our main event of the evening, which was the contract signing between Hangman Adam Page and Kenny Omega for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship match at Full Gear. And first thing that stood out was Kenny's suit and Kenny's look. And again, like, I don't know if I've said it on here, or maybe it was with Mimi Burris on the WWE podcast, which is phenomenal. Shout out to them, and look out for their prediction show this week coming up. And of course, her AEW Dynamite Review proper. She amazing. I love hearing what she has to say, and it's always fun just going back and forth with her and just bouncing ideas. But again, just side plug for them and side shout out. But I don't know if that's my point there was, I don't know if I probably said it to her, but his facial hair, and I know that they had started doing this, with the Young Bucks a few months ago, but what they've been doing with their beards, their mustaches and stuff like this, but this handlebar beard mustache look that he has, which is like circa Triple H, 2003, 4, 5 era, but it's just that and the suit and the shades, which the shades were, I love them. Like, they were, I don't know what brand they were, but they were solid. His whole look was just classic Kenny. Like, I'm digging this obnoxious version of himself, but I loved the look and how it was loud, but not too loud. But I don't know, just for whatever reason, the second he made his way through the tunnel, and the suit just stood out to me for whatever reason. But they made their way to the ring, and so I saw someone else, I forget who it was to give them proper credit, but someone had referenced that the button-up shirt, cowboy shirt that Hangman had wore last night is the same shirt that he had wore in a sit-down interview previously when him and Kenny were the tag team champions. So I thought that was a nice little cool throwback, and it just shows, I don't know if that was deliberate, but it could show the severity that Hangman is placing on this match and just the importance of it and the heaviness of it, because that was when he was in a tag team with Kenny. I mean, that obviously that was towards, like, for the character at least, the beginning of the downward spiral with, the drinking, all that stuff. But I don't know, it was just a nice little throwback, because those interviews, like, those sit-down interviews that they had as a team were always an interesting insight to their characters together itself. So looking back on it now, it's just fun to think of. But that was a nice little callback, regardless if it was planned or not. But the whole segment itself, I'm gonna admit, they got me. I'm not gonna go in detail word for word what they said, but because to be honest with you, the promo that Hangman cut a few weeks ago now, maybe a couple weeks ago, was just so well done. It was just so, like, it was such a classic babyface promo, and just something that was missing, and just him owning up to his mistakes and saying how he's going to try, and how, he's failed in the past, but, he's here to right his wrongs, and just, man, like, it was just a classic promo itself. So I don't think anything would have compared to that either, and I don't think, obviously, that was the goal, but the swerve at the end was so well done. I'm gonna admit, though, at first when I saw the cameraman, he was in the left corner, from the view at least of the ring that we had at the time, to the left side of the table. I was like, man, that's kind of odd. Like, you don't really see the camera guys, like, in the ring itself, right? I mean, you maybe do, but for, like, a brief second when they're doing in-ring promos and segments like that, but never taking up that much of the shot. So I was like, whatever, but nothing major. And then the guy moves and stands directly in front of the other cameraman in the other corner. So now I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Like, what is he doing? Like, it's still, like, I didn't think Don Callis. Like, for whatever reason, like, my mind didn't go Don Callis. I'm thinking, like, this cameraman sucks. Like, I don't, like, of course we know Tony sees this in, like, production. So it's like, man, I feel for this guy after the show. But then it all made sense, right? Of course, it ended up being Don Callis. He attacked Hangman, and just everything else just ended up playing out, because right before then, and that was kind of, and part of me took a few steps back, I kind of believed Kenny too. Like, I thought, of course, we know Kenny is supposed to be, a heel and all that good stuff. And not to say that he was trying to be a good guy here, but I was like, all right, this is the direction that they're trying to make or trying to take with Kenny. Like, we don't trust him. Like, even if he does shake Hangman's hand, we don't expect him to be a good guy in the match, right? We expect him to try to cheat and take the short way out, do whatever he has to do to retain his title. So he's just trying to give more false hope to Hangman. So I was like, all right, whatever. And then to see Don Callis being the cameraman and just attacking Paige and making him bleed and having Kenny sign the contract in Hangman's blood and just having that as your final visual for the night was just perfect. It was just perfect. Like, you expect things to go wrong in contract signings, right? But this was so thought out and so well done. And like Callis said, you forgot about him. Like, I expected him to show up at Full Gear or to at least, make his return with Hangman, with Omega at Full Gear. But I think having him return on Dynamite kind of shows the hand a little bit more too, which I'll, again, get into more in the prediction show proper, but I like what they did here, and I like having Callis come out, and they got me, and I'm happy they got me. It was a cool ending. But the show itself, like I've said here now a few times, I'm just going to call it the Go Home Show for Full Gear, and I think it was solid. I don't think it has the hype itself going into an all-out pay-per-view just a few months ago, and I think that's fine. Like, I think for an all-out type of show like that, and I'd be curious to hear what in a lot of, or maybe even just Tony Khan's mind, like what he would view as like the WrestleMania pay-per-view for, AEW, whether that is all out or if it's Double or Nothing, or what would it would be. But this doesn't need to be the biggest, or like it doesn't need to have any of that extra hype or anything like that. It just needs to be what it is, and I think this is going to be maybe a sleeper of a pay-per-view. I think that maybe people's expectations are going to be not negative at all, but maybe not as high as they were going into an all-out, but I think it's going to deliver like an all-out pay-per-view. So definitely excited for that, and I'm going to cut it off here and work on the prediction show later on here tonight, but I'm going to make it obviously 2 separate episodes now, just not to bog down the episode and just kind of give you guys some breather too, and to not have everything be such a cluster. But if you made it through, I appreciate it, and as always, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at ASHMANNS, or shoot me an email at kickashman@gmail.com. But yeah, look forward to hearing what you guys think, and of course to the pay-per-view on Saturday, and hope you guys have a great week. Take care.